All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Effort Over Everything podcast. I'm your host, Jason Kleep, and on today's episode, MDV and I dive into an incredible episode with Nicky Rod. Now, Nicky, he's been in the jiu-jitsu space for quite a while. He's a super hardworking guy with a unique background, and we were in Austin. We were in Austin to film some content with Flow Grappling, where we take him through some fitness. He took us through some jiu-jitsu, which was very interesting. And before we got into any of this content, wanted to dive into a great podcast, share a little bit more about his background, his mindset, training, jiu-jitsu, all kinds of different topics that I really enjoyed talking about. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as I do. This idea of effort over everything, right? Putting in the best effort possible. I think Nicky is a really great example of that, specifically of his abilities on the mat. And if you haven't checked out any of his stuff, definitely go look this guy up. He is out there crushing it. Super dynamic athlete, incredible to watch. Before we dive into the episode, I just want to remind you that if you haven't checked out the NC Fit Collective, if you're a gym owner and you're looking for session plans, programming, we got you covered. If you're an athlete, you're in your garage, you're training at the gym, and you're looking for amazing workouts tested, curated by industry leaders, go check out the NC Fit app, available on Android and also on Apple. And as always, if you enjoy this episode, if you get value from it, would really appreciate a rating or review. Now let's dive into an amazing episode with Nicky Rod and MDV. Let's go. All right, so where do we begin? Because there's a lot to talk about with you. I think the first step is, how did you end up moving to Puerto Rico and training with, the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world? How did you get that opportunity? And then how did that whole process even go down where all you guys are like, all right, man, we're out. Let's go to Puerto Rico.
So when I first started jiu-jitsu, I'm about 3 years in right now, I fell into Renzo Gracie Association. It's called South Jersey BJJ. So through affiliations, I was kind of already affiliated. In my first months of training, or first weeks of training, really, I was doing a lot of cross training, hopped to every single gym because essentially whenever I started, I was like the best guy in the gym, and I was looking for better guys, that people that were better than me. So eventually started being better than most guys in the gym, and then my coach Jay Rigobudo got me a private with Gordon. So I drive 3 hours to New York. I get to do a private with Gordon, and he was like, "Yo, if you want to come to practice tomorrow, feel free to swing by, train a little bit." I went to practice. Tried real fucking hard, and he was like, "Dude, come back all you want." So I just kept coming. I think the first up until ADCC World Championships, I was there 2 or 3 times a week, just because it was so fucking expensive, couldn't afford to make it up there every day. And then after ADCC, started going every day, and then moved there eventually. And pretty much when COVID hit, we were having problems training because honestly the cops even set up a sting to stop us for training.
A sting?
Dude, I'm telling you. So John, right? John was walking towards practice. We all waited across the street in some building wait for John to come open the door, because during COVID everything's closed,
Yeah.
So we see John walking down the street, and the cops intercept John, and they're like, "Are you gonna go to Henzo's today?" He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they're like, "Yeah, you can't train today." What's happening right now? We can't train because of COVID. So the cops literally, they set up pretty much a sting operation. They timed when he was coming to Henzo's and intercepted him, and was like, "Yo, you guys can train here." So we took that day off, and next day we went right back to training. We were like, "Dude, we gotta bounce. We can't skip training because of what's going on here." So we kind of we had some friends out in Puerto Rico. They're like, "Yeah, we'll set you up with a gym and some housing." And, we all found apartments, and it was from 1 week to the next, we're like, "Yeah, we're definitely going." And then shortly after, a couple days, Gordon left and John left. I was like, "All right, we're out,"
Dude, it seems to
crazy.
happen real fast, right? Because,
Yes.
You were wrestling, you had a wrestling background, then you kind of got into modeling, some other stuff, more fitness type thing.
Yeah.
And then boom, you wanted to get into jiu-jitsu. And then all of a sudden you got linked up with these top guys in the world. And then all of a sudden you moved to Puerto Rico with them. And now, you had some great success at ADCC, but now you've been training under Donna for maybe 2 years? No.
Yeah, about
longer.
2 years. About 2 years under John. Yeah.
And your game is probably 10x since you compete in ADCC. Is your game literally night and day?
I'm not even the same grappler. everything's better. Even my wrestling, we don't like, we do a lot more wrestling now, but like you would think because I'm so jiu-jitsu focused, like my wrestling wouldn't get better, but it's got tremendously better. And I'm reassuring that by practicing with other guys. Like I don't know if you guys saw, but I was with a guy named Jaden Cox when I was in Colorado Springs, and Jaden Cox is a world champion wrestler. Guy took third in the Olympics at freestyle. He was probably set to win the Olympics this year. We had some complications at the trials. But wrestling guys like that. I wrestled with another guy, Gable Stevenson, NCAA champ, and he won the Olympic trial, so he's been in the Olympics for the U.S. at heavyweight. So, I see my capabilities on the mat versus those guys, and I'm like, these jiu-jitsu guys just can't hang with me. So I understand how much better, I'm getting on my feet, and specifically my hand fighting. I feel like my hand fighting is, at one of the highest levels in the world, because I've seen what I can do on my feet, specifically with my hands against the best, and man, it's gonna be a real problem for the jiu-jitsu guys.
First of all, two things. Number one is that sting operation in New York is probably it's fucked up, but also it's probably the easiest sting operation ever, because you got this guy walking down the street in a fucking
rash guard and
a fanny pack. He's like, all right, that's the guy.
That's the guy.
But the other thing is, like, that's wild that you entered into this jiu-jitsu world in 2018 as somebody who had some wrestling experience. You're athletic, you're fit, but you go into it and all of a sudden you're doing really, really well. Not just like doing well in like your room. You're doing really well with Gordon Ryan in a private session. Like what kind of physical attributes or mental or emotional things kind of do you attribute to that success right away, right off the bat?
I honestly, wrestling throughout my younger life, really prepared me for this, but just really hardships in life. I mean, they taught us from day one at practice, you always want to be the hardest worker in the room. I think that's something that was pushed on us heavily, and it stuck with us, and it made it so everything was a competition. So like in wrestling practice, if we went for runs, like 5-mile runs, it wasn't like a paced run, it was a sprint. We're sprinting for 5 miles. Like my teeth would physically hurt because how hard I was clenching my jaw from fucking trying to win the run. Wow. You know what I mean? Like I was trying. It's hard for me to explain it, but I was trying so hard to win in every aspect. Like even in wrestling, like if I could take you down 3 times in a round, I want to take you down 5. I wanted to take you down 10, and our coach is always like, try more, harder. And when I got to jiu-jitsu, I realized it's more of a marathon than a sprint. So one of the hardest adjustments for me was to treat it like more of a marathon. Don't show all your cards right away, and understand that you treat this match like it's never going to end. Because 15-30-minute match, you really got to have that cardio to withstand that long period of time. So transitioning from the sprinting version of myself to the marathon version was tough. But in wrestling, just learning, try to be the hardest worker, and wrestling made me good at mimicking people. So if I saw something that I liked, or I felt it more so, I practiced with you, I felt something that I like, without you even teaching me, I was able to kind of rehearse that, in my own ways, in drilling and practice. And I think that mimicking ability gave me tremendous value in competition. I also saw a big hole in the heavyweight division where it looked like these guys are winning world championships off of just bad wrestling. I have a friend, Orlando Sanchez, that I competed against, but a lot of his matches, guy was pull guard, he'd smash from top in half guard and get past, and he'd win, or he'd hand fight, take a bad shot, or the guy would take a bad shot on him and he'd land on top and he'd win. It was to me, it just looked like bad wrestling. So I was like, I have decent wrestling, I should probably do okay in this in the heavyweight division. And I was right, man. These guys, jiu-jitsu guy, specifically in the heavyweight, because I knew there was an ego thing. Like the guys didn't want to pull guard, so I knew going in the ADCC,
they didn't want to pull guard.
Yeah, it was going to be a wrestling match, because it looks bad on them if they're submitting to me in the sense of taking bottom, accepting bottom. So a guy like Muhammad Ali, really good judo guy. He's 260 pounds and he's got a couple inches, in height on me. I was able to beat him with quality hand fighting, and then at the end, get a takedown when necessary.
So I want to back up a little bit, and then I want to get back to the ADCC, and then I want to get back to training with Danaher. But how'd you grow up? What's your background? Because you seem like a hard worker. You seem like you're down just to throw down. You sound, Like, what's your family like? What was your childhood like?
I grew up. I grew up in Jersey. Hard work at home. My dad always had 2 jobs. But I work with my dad. I learned what hard work was at a really young age. Like, from 3-4 years old, whenever I could pick up a hammer, my dad flipped houses his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in houses. I learned how to do a lot of things. Play with concrete, frame things out. Sheetrock and whatnot. So I understood what hard work was. My dad always said, like, listen, no matter what in life, you're gonna have to work your hardest, but you have to choose where you put that energy at. If you want, you can do this house stuff. There's a lot of money to be made here in the real estate world. But if you find something that you're really passionate about, you work equally as hard, and you'll get it there. So that kind of stuck with me. So I always knew, I was comfortable with trying my hardest every day. That was the normal to me. I understood what that intensity was, what that lifestyle was. So just kind of focusing and finding something that I could try my hardest at, and that was going to benefit my future was kind of what I was searching for.
Mm-hmm. It seems like, obviously hard work has been something that's been deeply ingrained in you. Like you said, with your dad, your wrestling coach, you guys were working extremely hard there. But it also there's this element of, like, you haven't let yourself get comfortable in any of these things. Like, you could have walked into jiu-jitsu and been the biggest dog in all these small ponds across the country, but you decided to put yourself into the arena with the literal best practitioners in the world, which could have been, and probably was, extremely uncomfortable for a while.
I have fucking nightmares sometimes about this. I had days, like, specifically in the first year of grappling at Henzo's, where, like, mainly our first round is we start mounts, right? Where I have a guy mounted on top of us, and, like, I'd be stuck under Gordon. If I didn't get up, John will let the round go 10, 15, 20 minutes till I got up. So I'm stuck in bottom. And it's like, you could tap, you can mentally break if you want out. You know what I mean? But that just shows you, what kind of person you are. So
that was like back like almost in the beginning, because you didn't have that much jiu-jitsu before that. So, like, some of you're like a year into jiu-jitsu and you're starting in the mount. Excuse me, Gordon is in your mount, right?
He's mounted.
And you're
on top,
starting.
yeah,
he's mounting you, and you're starting there.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get out.
Yeah.
And you would keep the round going until you got out.
Yeah, I mean, John had many days like that where it's like if he saw something that you needed to get done, he would just let it go. Just get up.
And it's not a normal black belt on top of you.
That's the GOAT.
This is the guy who is the best at controlling anybody while in mount.
Yeah. But things like that reassured me that, like, all right, I know my top game's fantastic, but what if you get stuck on bottom? What if I get stuck on bottom?
So
you know what I mean? I'm going to get up.
You talk about Gordon being the GOAT, and obviously he has, a record to prove that he is exceptional, right? But you train with him now on a regular basis still. So, like, what is that vibe like? Because, you talk about all you guys, you're kind of newer. Like, you've only been there, like, a couple of years. It's not like you guys have been together for years and years and years. But something I was telling MDV is that when I saw you guys at Who's Number One, a couple months ago, your team seems pretty tight. And it seems like you guys, even though you're down, you're going to throw down with each other. Like, you guys also have each other's back, and you guys are supportive of each other. How is that dynamic in Puerto Rico? I'm really curious, because you're all a bunch of guys who want to, like, essentially dominate, but at the same time, that you need each other to do well.
Yeah.
And then watching you guys, like, support, like, Gordon's brother or whoever, like, when they were fighting, was really cool to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic, and I think it's a one of one dynamic, because no other room in the world you have the world's best top 5 guys. You have Gary Tonin, Nicky Rod, Craig Jones, Nicky Ryan, Gordon Ryan. I mean, Ethan Krellistein. Fuck, we have a few more in there too. So, yeah, it's I think we're all so good and we're all getting better so fast because we understand that we have to help each other get better. The harder practices, the better you are against me in practice, the better I'm going to do in competition. So we don't hold anything back in practice. If I have something to ask, I'll ask them, and they'll give me a straight up answer. Listen, I got to this position because you did this wrong. I'm like, fuck, you're right. Let's fix it. So it's a very interesting camaraderie where everybody in the room as a whole wants to help each other get better, and that's why we elevate our game constantly. Like, me 6 months ago was completely different from me right now. It's we change so fast. It's almost weird. Like even a guy like Nicky Ryan that's been grappling with John for years. I mean, guy constantly changes his game. You know, he's on his feet now. Before he was only legs. You know, now last match he dominated top position. He didn't accept bottom at all. So.
Yeah. I've been coaching for a long time. I've been coaching for like 15 years. And I've been studying coaches for a long time. And I have never, ever witnessed somebody who's even close to what John Danaher is like and I've never met him. I've only listened to him on podcasts. I see him on social media. But he is a unique dude in so many different ways. I heard somebody describe him as almost like a comic book villain who's not like a real person. He's like walking around in the rash guards, a fanny pack, and the way that he speaks and communicates. But what makes him so effective as a coach to get the most out of everybody he works with, not just one person. He doesn't get the most out of just Gordon or Nicky or you. He gets the most out of everybody. What makes him so unique?
I think it's a combination of everything, because you can't have this success without the obsessive athletes. You know, you have to have the athlete that's, you know, like me. I drove 6 hours a day, 5 days a week to get to practice. Wild. You know, so you know, shit like that. And everybody has their own story. You know, Gary Tone has his own. Nicky Rod has his own way of getting there. You know, so if you ask anybody on my team, it's, you know, they've had their fair share of you know, issues getting to practice. One, you know, like you said, his voice, right? It's very
very calming.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, right?
He does things differently. Like in wrestling, right? A lot of coaches be like, all right, like they're yelling, they're like, all right, let's get up, let's get running, right? And John talks so low that nobody can say anything or you won't hear him. Yeah. So it's like just above a whisper, and that's one of his you know, techniques. So where it's like, all right, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to hear it. Yeah. So it makes us shut up and, like, you know, actually pay attention to him, and we've gotten used to that. But he just does things differently. We understand how obsessed he is with you know, with the sport, and not only just jiu-jitsu, but he's really a lover, in love with all things martial arts. You know, obviously specifically jiu-jitsu, but he has, you know, has tons of boxing knowledge. Yeah. I mean, he built GSP to what he was. You know, so and it's like it's hard for us to miss practice with him. You know, we see how, like, physically beat up he is, and the guy's still there 7 days a week, and it's like, how can we miss a day if he's still there? You know, so it's a combination of things. It's John's obsessed. It's John never misses a day. We feed off that because it's like, you know, our leader is not going to take a day off. Wait, how can we? And I don't know. I think a personality like that just kind of attracts people. Like, I don't know, it's different. Yeah. You know, you never want to go somewhere that's, you know, it's all the same. I think how different he is very attractive to us, because I feel like my team as a whole, we're all one of one. Like, everybody's so different. You don't have the same personality, you know, in the 15 guys that we have, you know, on the team. So, yeah, I mean, I can't pinpoint exactly what it is that makes him so great, but it's a ton of different variables and how different he looks at the world as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's like a New Zealand robot that's programmed on low formal mode. Like, the way that he speaks, I've never heard anybody communicate like he does, but, like, you have to stop and listen to what he says, because what he's saying, even over audio podcasts, listen to my fucking headphones, it's so powerful. You're like, I can't believe this guy just said that. Yeah. And it makes you have these awakening moments over these small things that he says, which are
like there's small conversations that you have in life, or things that you hear that, like, completely change the way you view life. And shit like that just happens all the time with John. Wow. Like, he'll say simple things. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'll think about it. I'm like, dude, you're so right. And it just completely gives you a different aspect. So it's like, people say, like, right before a match, like, don't show me anything. I'm not going to learn nothing right before a match. It's like, dude, with John, you fucking never know, dude.
He'll just show you something. And so, like, when I was, you know, with you guys, we were talking about what your guys' typical day of training looks like. So when you guys are getting ready and you're getting ready for practice, what does that entire flow look like? Like, it's every day. He's there every day.
So practice is supposed to start at, like, 9 o'clock. And we don't start till like 12:30. John doesn't.
That's just 3 hours
Yeah,
late.
it's a verbal thing where we say, all right, we'll be there at 9 o'clock, but nobody, like, John doesn't show up till like 11, 12, something like that. So that's.
So you guys just at the gym, just kicking it, waiting for
no. It's just like
The running joke.
It's like a
just
joke.
a running joke, I guess. Yeah, I guess it really started when COVID hit. John would be like, yo, practice at like 10 o'clock. And he'll be strolling down the street like 12. We're like, all right, John time, 10 o'clock. We got it. All right. So we made those adjustments. What's your question again?
What does it look like?
What's a normal day?
Training, right? All right, so we start practice like 12:30. We're there for probably an hour before practice, just talking, bullshitting, building the morale in the room.
Yeah.
Also working on things, if we have questions and whatnot. And then we start practice. John teaches for like an hour and a half to 2 hours of technique. So it's pretty long. Granted, we have days where maybe only shows 30 minutes and we hop in. That's rare. It's usually an hour and a half of learning or so. And the learning consists of a long sequence. John likes to teach us a sequence of like 8 movements, 6 to 8 movements. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Typically, like start like as an example, take down to submission, or are we talking about like entry into submission, or
it's a combination of everything.
Yeah.
But like an example would be like maybe we start with ashigarami. We sit the guy down. We have the partner react. Obviously, he tries to stand up, and then we counter that reaction. So it'd be a lot of that. A lot of have the partner react, and we counter your reaction from there.
And ashigarami is just leg entanglement, right?
Standing ashigarami, bit leg entanglement when you're on the ground and partner standing. So a lot of long sequences, which at the beginning was really hard for me to grasp because I was just used to like show me one move, I do it. So that took me some adjustments. But I found that like everybody drills different. Like a Gordon Ryan, if John shows him something to do, he'll do it perfectly and he'll do it the whole drilling session. A guy like Gary Tonin or Ethan or even myself, I'm more like, you show me a sequence, I do sequence a couple times when I'm drilling, and then it just starts like creativity starts flowing. I like if I'm supposed to turn left, I'll turn right, I'll turn upside down. Like I'll start the sequence and I'll kind of make it my own. I'm a very big believer in letting your body and letting your mind think for yourself. So like I'll allow John to show me a sequence. I'll do it a couple times and I'll start the sequence and I'll just let it turn into whatever it turns into.
Yeah. So you're kind of feeling it out as you're going through the different repetitions and seeing what feels good for you. I'm kind of relatively new to jiu-jitsu, but been doing fitness for a long time. The thing that I've found difficult for me is like I'll learn something, but then I'll forget it, or like I'll be halfway through a sequence and I'll move the wrong way, turn the wrong way. What is has it come natural to you? Is it your wrestling background? Is it just the people who are around you that like you're picking this stuff up faster than most, if not anybody who picks
it's
it
also
up?
time on the mat, right? I mean, he's spending a couple hours drilling, right?
For sure.
But,
I mean, I feel like like you said, it's time on the mat, but because of wrestling, I had such an innate ability to get to my opponent's back, right? So I kind of understood how to get to the opponent's back. Now it's like the objective is control now.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm learning at a fast pace, but I feel like having the creativity. Like I like to watch a lot of people drill, right? Like Penn State University of the NCAA wrestling, they're like the DDS of NCAA wrestling. They destroy everybody. They won like NCAA's like past 8 years. You know what I mean? So their coach is Cale Sanderson, and I watch a lot of the way they move, and I talk to a lot of Penn State guys. I want to understand, their mindset, why they're so dominant. How can I kind of transition some of their knowledge to the jiu-jitsu world? And a lot of it talk about their drilling and how creative they are, to where like, they're showing moves and stuff, but they're also showing independency. Don't be afraid to try different things and find your true potential, because I feel like people limit themselves when they say, oh, I'm just supposed to shoot double this way, and that's the only way it's supposed to be shot. So I feel like adding creativity, adding just different ways of moving, different mentalities while you're on the mat can ultimately elevate your game. Because if you implement the proper techniques with your own style, like Gary, you look at a guy like Gary Tony, you never know which way he's going to turn. If he gets to his back, he's going to left, right, up, down. Like it's so unpredictable. I think unpredictability plays a big part in somebody's success.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the perfect place to try all that stuff out, man, while you're training, because the consequences of failure are, although they're high in practice, you don't want to let your coach down. You're going to maybe mess up with your partner, but not as high as when you're on the mat in a tournament.
Also, like in practice, it's easy to for us at least, it's easy to like go 100 all the time because you want to win so bad. But man, just like shutting the ego off and trying different stuff just elevates the game, man. I had spent many hours on the mat, like, just fighting for my life out there. And I was like, man, if I just spend some more time getting better, learning, being creative, and then come back to going harder, it benefits me way more.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that. So, I mean, you come from like a kind of school of hard work and kind of grinding it out. How much of jiu-jitsu you think is like physical and like that? And then how much of it is like the mental and technical side and having like 7 steps ahead of your opponent, right? So I'm going to do this to create this, to create this. I mean, like, I'm curious obviously the best would be the blend of both, but I'm curious, like, from your background, did you have to like reframe the way you looked at grappling because of how technical you could be?
I think the jiu-jitsu world maybe 10, 15, even 20 years ago was more of just grinding it out, being tough, using muscle, just using athleticism. But now, man, I mean, with the implementation of leg locks and with the systems and of how, specifically how DDS is attacking jiu-jitsu, it's forcing other people to say, wow, okay, we really have to make this understand it's more of a cerebral sport than it was years ago. So, yeah, I think for me personally, I really had to understand that, like, I have to think while I'm doing, because when I was wrestling, I've been doing it for so long, I would just go. I wouldn't even think. I just let my body do however I would react. I just keep it moving. I keep the pace high. Now the pace is a little bit slower, so it forces the mind to say, okay, we have to think about what we're doing. What's our actual next step? If he does this, I'm going to do that. So yeah, jiu-jitsu definitely forced me to think a lot more. And honestly, I think that mentality helps my wrestling, because now I'm on the feet. Makes me not only am I reacting fast, but I'm thinking faster. I'm making these calculations slightly faster because I'm so used to, like, there's a way to roll, right, where you roll live and you're just flowing. You're going hard, but you're not thinking of it, you know. And there's a way to do it where you're going fast and you're going through the thoughts, going through the movements in your mind, and that's a little bit harder. It's mentally taxing more, but I think it's a greater benefit once you're live.
The leg game obviously is something that DDS has been part of revolutionizing, right? You have that famous story of Dean Lister coming to Renzo Gracie and, saying that thing to John where it's like, why would you ignore 50% of the body, right? And John's whole world, his mind melts out his ears, right? From a wrestler's perspective, a lot of wrestling, you come into this, it's top heavy. Your upper body focus, obviously you're shooting, getting past the legs, going to pins. How has that been for you in learning and understanding this lower body game to jiu-jitsu, because it's a big deal now?
I want to say I did legs every day for like the first year.
Wow.
Before I even felt comfortable attacking them against good guys in practice. Like, I would do like on the blue and purple belts, and like initially we were even, you know what I mean, but these guys would give me sometimes, the first couple months of doing leg stuff. So I would do a ton every single day. I'd be on my back or attacking legs for the first year, and then now I'm in year 3 now, where I'm starting to feel more comfortable. Where soon it's going to be good enough where I can implement this stuff into matches and whatnot. But it's definitely the hardest part. For me, the hardest part of jiu-jitsu is the leg stuff, because it's a slower pace. But it's a faster thought process, because things can happen so fast. Like, dude, I feel like the leg breaks, it goes from being completely fine to, man, you blow your knee and your ankle out like so fast.
Yeah,
that's what makes it scary, dude. I mean, coming from because I roll a lot of gi jiu-jitsu. I started in gi a lot, and then when I got into no gi, dude, the leg entanglements, like that kind of stuff, just for a while I just shied away from it. Like, as soon as someone even got me remotely into something, I just I would just tap. And I had to break past that, right? I had to kind of get a little bit more comfortable with it. I'm still not super comfortable, but man, the leg stuff, it just, for some reason, even more so than like the arms, it just
because you're taking your ability to walk away.
Yeah, it's scary stuff, man.
Yeah, and the way that you can transition from, and I know very little about this, but just from seeing, you can transition from a straight ankle to a heel hook to a knee bar very, very quickly. Yeah. And the consequences of those 3 movements can all be pretty bad, but the second 2 being much more potentially dangerous. I was going to ask you guys about rest days, because that's something that in our world people talk about. Oh, you got to take a lot of rest. You got to take some time off. Make sure you're sitting on the couch. Make sure you're recovering fully. Like, does that exist in your world or no?
No, not at all. No, we train jiu-jitsu hard as fuck every single day, 7 days a week. And no, we have a few guys on the team that lift, a lot, but I usually lift, if not 6, usually 7 days a week. But
Wow.
two or three of my lift days are more for rehab. I get the blood pumping in places that for recovery and stuff like that. And but yeah, I like to lift hard, pretty like 5 days a week.
What does lifting hard mean for you? Because I know what that means for Jay and I. If we're going to roll into the gym, we're going to get after it. I know what that is, but what's lifting for you?
Like I was home, man. In being in Puerto Rico, I work out in a garage, which is great, but I got to go to like a real gym.
A good New Jersey gym?
Yeah, a good Jersey gym. Yeah. So I did train like a heavy arm session, and I like to split my stuff up like one body part. So like I don't even do arms. I just do biceps, and then I have a day just for triceps. So I'll do like 8 exercises, typically 4x20, and everything's like drop sets. Start heavy, to where I can only get 5 to 8 reps, and then drop it a little bit so I finish out 15, 20. So that's my style. I like to exhaust myself. I think it's just fun. I like to watch bodybuilders lifting weights, like Arnold and shit like that. That always inspired me. I always had this vision of looking like if a guy that could look like Arnold but perform like me, like fuck, that's a spectacle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I always strive to have that physical appearance, because I was like, no matter what I do in life, even if I'm sitting at a fucking desk, at least I'll be jacked and I look good there. So that's kind of the game plan behind that.
It's not a bad strategy.
No, it's not a bad strategy at all. I got to connect him with Hani Rambad, who's actually in town. He's like the number one bodybuilding coach, and I spent some time. I did some bodybuilding stuff with him, and it just changed the way that I looked at the way bodybuilders try and focus on a different muscle group. But it is interesting because off on the mat you're so dynamic, right? On the mat you're full body, working different positions, and then off the mat you're going very muscle specific. So we started kind of showing you a few of more like this kind of functional application, like clean and jerks and that kind of stuff. How do you think do you think your fitness off the mat will start transitioning a little bit more towards that, or what is hindered, or is it like you don't feel comfortable with the techniques, that's why you kind of avoid it, or do you see value in those kind of compound movements and then translating to the mat, or do you think the individual muscle groups is the way to go? I mean, I'm just curious.
All right, so my mindset, right? I always feel like I'm in a rush, right? Specifically when I'm lifting, I feel like I'm in a rush to get big, right? And for me, I always felt the fastest way to get big was bodybuilder style. High reps, that hypertrophy training, getting that fucking pump where your muscles are just used to being expanded all the time. I think the functional stuff is probably way better for me, like in the terms of jiu-jitsu and whatnot. But I think if you're going for looks, the high reps, the pump is it's going to get you the looks. But what I do find is that to get shredded, those full body workouts, the stuff you showed me, way better. Like I was losing fat way faster doing that stuff. I just feel like I use my core more. I burn way more calories, squatting around and stuff like that. So definitely to get leaner, this is probably the way.
It's I think the tides are changing a bit in jiu-jitsu, where people are more open to strength and conditioning off of the mat. But I've even talked to some people recently where they go, that's a joke. Don't be doing that kind of stuff off of the mat. Like, you get all of your training, everything that you need, you're going to find right here.
There's a common thing where, I'm sure you guys hear this, like overtraining. Like, I hear it all the time. Like, I do a lot of seminars and stuff. People always ask me, how do you deal with overtraining? I'm like, what is that? Like, I never really understood it. I've trained as hard as I could, and I've never died. I mean, I feel like that's
a good litmus test.
I feel like that's
alive.
the test, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could take another step, you didn't fucking overtrain. If you're still walking around, you got some left.
I think what they're probably referring to, and this is when I was really training for the CrossFit Games, what I would find is that if I trained too much, my results would actually go in a negative direction.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel like you're on the mat, you're grinding it out for 2-3 hours, and then you go and you do some bodybuilding type stuff, and then you get so fatigued you can't perform as well the next day? Or do you constantly still feel like you can still perform?
So I mean, I have peak days. Like for me, usually like Wednesday, Thursday, for whatever reason, are just my best days. I do the same shit every day. I lift. I fucking do the jits. I eat good. I get my 8 to 10 hours of sleep. But for whatever reason, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm on fire.
Oh, so today's Thursday, and
we're
that's
going
the day
at
that
it.
we're rolling.
We're going at it.
Have fun.
I'm in a lot of
I'll be
trouble.
160 pounds just chilling over here watching you guys get after it.
What are you weighing?
212.
Okay, I'm like 35, 40.
Yeah, I mean, look. Let's
Have fun.
Maybe we can start with me in your side control.
Dude, I might be tired from the fucking.
That's my goal for today. I need to exhaust you as much as possible. So, by the way, we're in Austin, Texas, and the idea is we're partnering up with Flow Grappling, and I kind of pitched this concept. I was like, hey man, let's try and show the world a little bit of fitness stuff and a little bit of jiu-jitsu stuff in one video. And I think you're a great person to do that with, and us together, because I'm down to show you some stuff. You're down to show me some stuff, and then you're down to do a workout with me, and I'm down to do some rolls with you. It's just a nice collaboration between on the mat and off the mat, and I think we need to start having more of those conversations and see what can we do, especially for like the general public. Maybe for the top level competitors, they have a very specific program they're doing, but for the average jiu-jitsu practitioner, what could they do to feel good on the mat, feel good off the mat, and keep their overall health at a high level?
Yeah.
Is it just jiu-jitsu, or is it jiu-jitsu and also some fitness incorporated?
I think weights are so important. I mean, for me, I feel like it boosts my immune system. I just overall, I feel better. I feel more energized after a day of lifting weights. I think a lot of people can benefit, from being in a weight room, man.
The overtraining question is really interesting to me. I mean, we get that question a lot. I get that question a lot. A lot of times, and I'm not trying to be a dick to anybody, a lot of times when people are asking this question, I think that there's some fear or comfort that they're trying to get around, where they just don't want to sometimes put in the hard work that's necessary to get to the level that you need to get to.
I think that honestly, most people don't even have the mental fortitude to overtrain.
Yeah.
Like most people don't know. Like a lot of people think they know what hard work is. Most people don't know what hard work is. Not in today's world where you could go, buy fucking cheesesteak wherever. You're not forced to hunt for your food. You guys don't know what. A lot of people don't know what hard work is. So like you said, the overtraining thing is just more so people trying to be okay with taking a break.
That's an interesting perspective on that, right? Like, I can see how that relates for sure.
Yeah,
you're almost trying to get they're almost trying to get permission not to train as much, but so you don't actually feel like there's that, like you have not hit that tipping point where you're like, hey man, I need to take a week off, or I need to take multiple days off. You don't really find that tipping point. Do you just regulate your training a little bit? Like you have harder days and easier days, or just every day is a hard day? I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. So I started lifting, right, 2014. So I'm about 7 years into like bodybuilding, right?
Yeah.
When I was just lifting, I would lift as hard as I can every day. My goal was to be as sore as possible the next day. Whatever body part it was, I wanted to feel like absolute dog shit the next day, and that was my accomplishment. Now, I make sure I try my best to do that only like 5 days a week, and the other couple days are just, like I said, like rehab stuff. And I don't think that's necessary for everybody to do that. That was just my preference. I grew up, like I was telling you guys earlier, I watched a ton of YouTube videos, trying to lift, and everybody's mentality I saw. I mean, everybody was like, dude, there's no such thing as overtraining. So I just kind of stuck with that mentality, and it's helped. I mean, eventually you're gonna have days where you have to take days off, whether it's injury, whether it's life. You just couldn't make it to the gym, so that's the days that I take off. If I can go to the gym, I'll go to the gym.
Fair enough. Now, talking about off the mat, I'm just curious. Like, talk a little bit about your childhood and your dad getting you in and flipping houses and grinding it out there, coming from Jersey. But then there's like a lot of years, like you got into modeling, right? So like from a career perspective, from a business perspective, like what does that look like right now? Do you have sponsorships? I know you do some stuff where you sell, like programs for fitness and whatnot, but like what does the life of a jiu-jitsu practitioner, especially at your guys' level, look like from a financial perspective? Like what are the goals there, and then how do you guys build? Because a company like BJJ Fanatics has done a great job of creating a network that you guys could use your knowledge and your audience to build some income. But like, what does a typical life from a business side look like of a jiu-jitsu athlete? I'm just curious.
I mean, we make have a few different sources of income. We have the social media stuff where we sell we post ads on Instagram, on YouTube, whatnot. Then we have the BJ Fanatic stuff. We sell stuff there. I have a personal website where I sell merchandise. I have I missed one. We have gear sponsorships as well, and then we have the competitions that pay the bills. Really, we only have one guy making millions right now in the sport. That's Gordon. So we're striving to expand the sport and build the sport to where the millionaires in the sport, it's readily available. You know what I mean? We want to have maybe the top 5 or the top 10 of the elite guys in the sport, making 7 figures. I feel like that would help us push into being a more mainstream sport. But it's still a very small sport. I have this idea that like a subscription-based website, maybe a subscription-based app. You have your NC Fit app, right? That's the same kind of concept. I feel like if you just take the concept where you can have something that doesn't cost you anything and sell that, like the concept of selling knowledge, because that's essentially your knowledge is free. It's just it takes years to acquire it, and selling that. So like we're doing that for BJ Fanatics. I feel like there's many different ways we can profit. Like I get so many requests for watching live rolls. One of my ideas is maybe I have an app where I just post live rolls, and people pay. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but maybe they pay $5 a month. You know what I mean, to watch Gordon and Nicky Ryan roll live. You know what I mean, shit like that. I feel like I get constantly requested for things like that, and it's probably a market that we're missing right now.
Yeah, the jiu-jitsu community is definitely hungry for the knowledge, the expertise, access to you guys. What are you thinking about? How are you approaching your training? How are you approaching your roles? It definitely is something that's really interesting. Can I ask you a question about some of your goals?
Yeah.
I read somewhere that you wanted to have some MMA World Championships.
Yeah.
Is that still a goal for you?
So I don't want to win MMA. I don't want to be a world champ, but I want to develop fighters. I think
that's cool.
I think I've heard this many times. Told me by very important grapplers and fighters that I have the best style for fighting. My jiu-jitsu, my wrestling is the best style for MMA, and I think I can with if I have the right chemistry with certain fighters, if I'm around a couple certain fighters, I can help develop some world champions. For me, I don't want to get punched in the face, so fighting's really not for me.
Hey, at least he's just open to just saying, hey, that's kind of where I'm at, right?
I've been punched in the face a few times. Not for me.
Not in the cage, but outside the cage.
Yeah. No, thank you. So yeah, I think I can help develop fighters. And once I set my goals and I accomplish my goals in jiu-jitsu, I'd really like to learn more about striking and stuff like that. I've always had a passion for MMA as a whole, and I'd really like to coach some guys to champions.
What's your ultimate goal in jiu-jitsu?
I wanna win ADCC a few times, but I want to do it. First of all, I'd like to sub everybody, all the way through to the finals.
Well, and that's a common theme of the Danaher squad. So, I want to talk about this just for a minute because I was at Who's Number One with you, and we're sitting next to Nicky Ryan was competing, and if I'm not mistaken, he was bummed out on his performance because he didn't sub the guy.
Yeah,
but he had an extremely dominant performance, MDV. I mean, he dominated the whole time.
I probably watched it, yeah.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden, the crew kind of seemed like a little bummed. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? This guy is crushing it. It's because you guys, your goal is just sub. Yeah.
We work so hard, and it's like all we want to do is make you quit. You know what I mean? Like, that's all we think about. You take this guy that's been training this specific sport for past 10, 15 years of his life. He gets onto the mat with you, and once that exhaustion hits, and once the technical superiority starts to show, this guy just fucking quits on you, and that's really what we're looking for. We're going out there to make you quit, and if you don't quit, you break. So, have you guys ever broken? You ever break anybody in competition?
Well, like in CrossFit Games,
yeah,
it's a little different in CrossFit Games because you can't. I mean, you can see it every now and then with specific events. There's been a few. But because it's not like a one-to-one, it's just a different type of sport, right? Because there's, you're competing against a lot
field
of
of
people,
15 or 20.
a field, and so you can't really tell. But there's been moments where you know that you kind of broke the band, we call it, like where, like for a while, like you feel like you're kind of like we're peers, right?
Yeah.
And then slowly I start like, and the track is a great example. Where like let's just say the three of us are running, and the first lap we're all kind of together, second lap we're together, then slowly I break off. And then eventually you no longer are trying to keep up with me, but you're trying not to have the guy behind you catch you. So we call that break in the band, where like now I've broken away from the pack and you no longer look at me as the, like, you're trying to catch me. You're now trying to stay ahead of the guy who's in third. So we try and accomplish that, especially on the track, breaking the band.
CrossFit is such a pacing game.
Yeah.
Like, you see the guys, even when they start running, the guys that start off in front, they fucking just fall back fast, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of, because it's more of I would call it a more endurance-ish sport, especially over the games.
Yeah, it's very
We're talking about
endurance-based.
20 events over a week long. You got to really know how to, like, control yourself, right?
How's the level of exhaustion at like where you have to go back? Do you ever compete back-to-back days in CrossFit games?
Oh, yeah.
Right? How exhausted are you the next day?
Yeah, like the thing about the CrossFit Games, and I competed in 8 of them. It's like, it's a lot, dude, because you compete to get there. You have to go through like an open, regionals, and whatever. And those ones are different because you'd have a couple events a day, 2 events a day. It wasn't like, it was bad, but it wasn't like exhausting. Dude, the games, some days, man, like, I couldn't even, you have a lot of adrenaline when the things start, but especially like the first day, they will just crush you. Just crush you. Just try and do whatever they can to just put you in the ground, and then they want to see how can you recover and go finish up these events.
Wow.
And so it's definitely a sport about recovery and how well you could kind of like get yourself back up and complete the task. Because you're talking about 20 legitimate events over the span of a week long, so it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Different.
I watch a ton of CrossFit stuff on YouTube. I even watched one thing where they had to run over this, maybe it was a 3K over this mountain and back down, and they're like, "Oh, we have a surprise for you."
Oh yeah, you gotta do it again.
Do it backwards. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah,
dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was like recently. It was last year, but like one of the toughest one that I competed in quite a few events, but the toughest one was this one called Microwave Mountain. And so we did this triathlon at Camp Pendleton. It was probably the worst of my life. You start off with a swim in the ocean at Camp Pendleton, which is in Southern California.
How far is a swim?
It was like, I don't know. Do you remember? It wasn't terrible.
I don't remember how long he had to swim.
It was far, but it wasn't that far, right? It was far enough that, like,
the mountain work was real bad.
Yeah, if you weren't prepared, you were in trouble. Yeah. So you went out there and you did the swim, and it was okay. Then you biked, and that was considered one event. So what happened is we did the swim, we did the bike, and everybody's just crushing the bike because that was considered one event. So however you finished on that event was a scored event. But then as soon as you got there, you'd lay your bike down, and you had to sprint up this hill, and that was the end. Then from there was like a 10-mile switchback, and they had these Marines that would be stationed along the whole run. And it was just horrendous, dude, just straight up, straight down for 10 miles. But the worst part was you get like 6 miles in. At this point, you don't know how far you are. It's not like there's mile markers. And at every switchback, so you'd think you were going to get to the top, and then all of a sudden it would switch back. But there would be a Marine, and I'd be like, you'd be exhausted. You'd be like, hey, like, how much farther do we have? And they'd be like, you have 1 mile left, sir. And they would always say the same thing to me.
Oh, really?
And so I would think I had a mile left. And so, dude, and after a while, I was just like, okay, I know what you're going to say, but thank you for your service.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep going,
Man.
But those were like the mental games they try and play with you a
wow,
little
they
bit.
really mess with you.
Oh,
yeah.
dude, yeah, they mess with you.
Because it's something to be said, like, when you think you're done, your body, like, kind of relaxing. And then as soon as you think you have to go again, it's like a spike in your adrenaline. That's tough, dude.
Yeah, and so, like, talk about your competitions. Like, when you look back on, like, grappling, I feel like you've gone from, like, 0 to 100 real quick, right? You go from not really grappling to then going and compete at ADCC, having some great success there, right? Mm-hmm. So the ADCC rule set, so you're going for 15 minutes, right? Instead of the normal, like, what is it, 6 or 7
So
minutes?
it's, for ADCC, for the World Championships, it's 5 and 5 with a 5-minute overtime. Mm-hmm. So 5 minutes, no points, just submission only. At the second 5 minutes, they start adding points. So you could, like, for instance, I took down Orlando Sanchez. I took his back in the first, like, minute of our match, but no points at all. No points at all. But it's the refs will, like, take mental notes. So, like, all right, he won this 5 minutes. But yeah, so second 5 minutes it's points, and then it's a 5-minute overtime. if there's no points scored, and then the overtime is judged by judge's decision entirely.
I like that format. It's kind of cool, right? Like,
It's different. It's different. I probably prefer points all the way through.
points all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I get to your back and I score, you should probably get my points.
Because some people will sandbag the first 5 to get to the second 5 to then look for the point advantage, right?
And also, I mean, either way, I mean, if it was points all the way through, guys would score in the beginning and then fucking run away from you. Like you'll see legit guy, like professional athletes, like just walk backwards, try to get away from this guy the whole match. Yeah.
So speaking of which, like you take jiu-jitsu and it's gone through a lot. Now, do you ever roll gi jiu-jitsu? Not that much.
Gi?
Gi.
No, not at all.
But like, so you talk about gi jiu-jitsu is a little bit more traditional, a little bit more old school. No gi is a little bit more this newer school at a high level. But the competitions are all a little bit different, right? Like there's different rule sets. There's IBJJF, there's ADCC, there's I'm sure there's other ones, right? Now there's even like submission, like there's a combat jiu-jitsu where you get to hit a little bit. Like, which one do you think is the fairest or the most exciting? Because like to your point, dude, especially in a gi when people are just stalling, it's kind of boring, and I don't think it's good for the sport necessarily, right?
Yeah, I think my personal opinion, I think 15 minutes submission only. And judge's decision based upon whoever's attacking more, whether that be submissions, whether that be, passing. I think a sub-only match is the only way to really, define who's better. Points are good, but I don't know. There's an argument for both because like in the game, I mean, you could get a heel hook in 5 seconds. Like things happen fast. You could be 10 up and then somebody subs you and you lose. So. I like the idea of points, but I think 15 minutes sub only, and then whoever dominates that match, if there's no sub, probably wins. Yeah.
And that's what who's number one is.
Yeah,
15 minutes sub only. They do the 5-minute advantages. You get to see who the judges are favoring, but there's no points.
Yeah. There's no points, but it's understood that if you pass guard and you get to the back, that's you're winning. That's an advantage. We treat it like a fight. You want to dominate the fight. You don't want to be on bottom and trying to play from close guard or bottom half. You want to be on top, smashing the guy, getting past and getting to the back and whatnot.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say I think some people might look at that DDS mentality where it's like, hey, we're always looking for subs, and some people might go, well, that's probably not the most tactically smart thing to do in certain rule sets, right?
That's true, and we've had some issues where it's tactics, where it's like we're so hungry for the sub, but we've kind of failed to realize like fuck, I got to get my points first, and then we got to go for the sub.
That's true, but in all these rule sets too, if you submit, you always win, right? True. That's the only zero-sum game in all of these rule sets.
Very true. Very true.
So you got the no gi game, you got the gi game, you got these different rule sets, but you're talking about how there's a millionaire right now in jiu-jitsu and his name's Gordon Ryan and he's crushing it and there's a few others because of BJ Fanatics has done a great job kind of creating these revenue, and I think it's excellent. But like, what's it going to take for the sport to go mainstream? I think you look like UFC, and I think Conor did a really good job of pulling people in because he was a little polarizing and whatnot, but people wanted to see what happened. And I think Gordon in some way has similar characteristics where he is a little bit controversial or at times quite a bit controversial. Oh, yeah. But he's pulling people in from outside the sport who get interested. I was talking to a professional surfer yesterday, Nathan Florence, and he goes, oh, yeah, I saw like on my social media some dude making like $400,000 a month off DVDs, but he doesn't know who this guy is. He just saw that because it was kind of like captivating, right? Yeah. So what is it? What role do you think Gordon's playing in terms of like growing the sport? And I'm curious how that distracts from your team, or it doesn't. It's just good for everybody.
Yeah, I think the more popular he gets, the better it is for the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
I think what it's going to take is we need a superstar in life to have extreme success in jiu-jitsu. Like imagine me or Gordon or whoever has 1 million followers on not Instagram but YouTube. I feel like YouTube, if you're famous on YouTube, you're probably famous in real life. I feel like that's a common scenario. Somebody with a huge following to have a tremendous success. And I think you do that by growing your social media. Focus on the Instagram, focus on the YouTube. Becoming, maybe you vlog, your daily life or weekly competitions or whatever. Building a following like that, and then coming and competing because that's going to draw much more attention to us. I feel like, Gordon has like 300, 400,000 followers on Instagram. What if, what if you have a million? What's a sport look like when he has 2 million followers? I feel like, having a superstar, eventually developing a superstar outside of the sport, and then coming, competing in jiu-jitsu as well, I'll blow it up.
Yeah, it's interesting because, CrossFit for many years has tried to become a sport, and it is a sport for the people who participate in it, but it hasn't really taken off as a sport in the general public's eyes.
Yeah.
I think
not like baseball, football.
Exactly.
I mean, it takes years and years.
Yeah, it's hard because the general public looks at people doing CrossFit on TV and they go, well, those guys are just fucking working out, right? But there is something different about martial arts and having it being a discipline, and it's fighting, and it's so deeply ingrained in like culture and society that's a contest, right? And how UFC's been so successful. You think anybody currently in jiu-jitsu is going to make the jump into something like the UFC? Any big names in jiu-jitsu going to try and make a jump, or you think it's mostly these disciplines are going to kind of be different for a while?
I think they'll be different for a while. I think in the future, as wrestling starts getting implemented into jiu-jitsu more, I think then we'll start seeing fighters. Because I think the big hole in the game is like all the best jiu-jitsu guys are good from their back. They're used to being on their back. If you're on your back, I'm just going to punch you in the face.
Yeah, and MMA it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work, exactly. You see all the best jiu-jitsu guys, all the best grapplers that have the same common issue. I mean, a guy like Gilbert Burns, fantastic grappler, top guy grappler. Now, he beats the shit out of guys in MMA because his top game, he has a heavy top game. Obviously, he has the closed guard game as well. He's good on bottom. But he's known for being on top, and I think that's why he makes him so good in the cage. So having the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu is definitely key for winning the fights. You see too many times where a guy just has jiu-jitsu, has no idea how to get this guy down to the mat. It's where he just rolls the legs or he jumps guard. Like, what if Ryan Hall knew takedowns? Like, fuck, he probably wouldn't get KO'd, I don't know.
Yeah, he had a tough fight last fight that he went out. But I got a few more questions.
Yeah, let's keep it going. I mean, dude, I think that's super interesting. I think jiu-jitsu in itself could just continue on as a sport. I really do. I don't think that I don't necessarily see – there will be people who jump over to, like, UFCs or similar, right? Like, look at Buchecha, right?
Yeah.
Like, Buchecha, he was extremely dominant in jiu-jitsu, and then – now he signed a deal with
I think one
championship.
And I think you'll see some of those, but I think just the sport of jiu-jitsu itself has evolved a ton. I mean, dude, Who's Number One is only so old. Submission Underground is only so old. Like, you're seeing new.
I think it's always going to be separate, and I think jiu-jitsu as a whole, 5 to 10 years from now, is going to blow up. It's going to be a different thing.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go mainstream. I think we're going to get some mainstream sponsors. Maybe we get some sporting goods place. Maybe we get some like Reeboks or something. But I think honestly having somebody that takes the social media, specifically the YouTube, seriously becomes an important person there, and then has success on the jiu-jitsu mat, or just blow it out of proportion.
Do you think it needs like a centralized league, an association, and like a specific rule set? Go, hey, this is the shit. This is what we do. This is jiu-jitsu, right? Like, this is sport jiu-jitsu essentially. Because right now you're fragmented with Who's Number One, ADCC, all these other things.
Yeah.
I think it'll always be different competitions. But I do think we'll have one or two things that stick out, and I think it's going to be Who's Number One for full grappling, and then the ADCC.
Yeah.
I think those are going to be the two main worldwide events that happen consistently. I think everything else is just an accessory.
Yeah, because ADCC is every 2 years, right?
Yep, and I think they're trying to do Who's Number One more frequently.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Who's Number One and Flow in particular, they're doing a really nice job of creating this excitement about, like, what are the rankings, right?
Yeah.
Like, who are the number one fighters in the world at these weights? And you're kind of seeing now how certain people and certain teams are kind of coming up and getting more notoriety because they're on these lists that are created.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The documentaries have been really helpful too, at least for me. Like, we're not like super deep in jiu-jitsu, but we're probably more deep than some people. But like watching like the documentary or series on Daisy Fresh, for example, like I didn't even know who they were until I watched that on Flow Grappling, and like then you feel more connected with them, right? And I think that's a key too for growing the sport is having people feel connected to the athletes, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
And that's what happened early on in CrossFit that allowed it to grow, I think, because the spectators felt really connected to the athletes. I think the more connected they feel, the more bought in they feel. And I think like the content we're shooting today, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a good way to get to know you and get to know me and get to know others better, so that, you know, when they watch you fight, they feel like they know more about your background.
Yeah, it plays a big part, man. Having people connect, I think that's a entirely different aspect that, you know, we're supposed to grasp.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you if you could have one match against anybody in the jiu-jitsu world, and who would it be?
I like Buchecha. I know he's retired and stuff, but you know, whenever he wants to get back, I think it'd be a good match for me. That and like a Felipe Pena would be good too. Yeah, I think those are guys that are jiu-jitsu royalty, and I just really don't think they're that good. So it'd be a good match for me.
Those guys they both are like sunsetting their careers as a lot of these other guys like you and Gordon and DDS are coming up. It'd be really interesting fights.
If I was grappling like 5 years ago, I think I would have won my first ADCC. All these guys just stood up. They had terrible wrestling, and whoever like fell down first like lost.
The sport's definitely evolved a lot, right? Because you take, like, for example, Buchecha in a gi. I mean, I think he's dominant against – I mean, he's proven to be dominant against anybody in the world, right? Yeah. But, like, I think then as soon as you take the gi off, things start to speed up. The game changes, and it's more of a new school approach, right? So you take some of these –
more Americanized. It's more wrestling. It's more –
yeah, exactly. And so I just think the sport has evolved,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to continue to evolve to stay exciting. I think ultimately – what it comes down to is how well can spectators feel like engaged on it. But the gi's still going to be around. But I think the no gi, man, the speed of the game is just exciting.
Yeah. It's a much more visually pleasing. I think that, you know, that's people want a spectator. I don't know. They want to spectate some interesting. You know, some high pace. People don't have the attention span to watch a 30-minute slugfest. You know, they want to see a sprint. So
yeah,
definitely. You know, it's not always a sprint, but jiu-jitsu, no gi grappling, definitely more of a sprint than the gi for sure.
Who's one celebrity, alive or dead, who you think would be like just an absolute fucking savage on the mats?
One celebrity.
Alive or dead?
Yeah,
huh?
anybody. You know, Abraham Lincoln, or you can go with The Rock, whoever, man.
Yeah. Abraham Lincoln.
He might be. He looked pretty.
Tall and jacked.
Yeah, a good leg game probably.
Yeah, maybe some WWE guys. I mean, like maybe like a Randy Orton be good on the mat. Seems like an athletic guy, you know. Pretty strong dude. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe The Rock.
Maybe The Rock, yeah.
The Rock. I mean, bro, imagine if The Rock got into jiu-jitsu.
I would just run away for like
Be
the
the
first
best
2
thing for the
minutes.
sport.
It'd be the
Yeah,
best
it
thing
would.
for
It
the
would
sport
be massive
ever.
for the sport.
Oh,
yeah.
my God, it'd be massive.
Yeah.
Huh.
I wonder what his cardio's like at 400 pounds.
I don't, yeah.
400 pounds. Yeah, he's doing a lot of training for Black Adam right now. I don't know if he's got too much cardio.
Yeah. Well, dude, we really appreciate the time.
It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, it's really interesting to get in and to hear a little bit more about your background and that story, and like the modeling thing. Why did you leave it?
Well, for guy models, there's not that much money. Like, you know, for girls, they go to a photo shoot, they get $5,000, $8,000, $10,000. You know, guys get like $1,500, $2K, unless you're like, you know, top tier. But then again, every guy wants the easy job of taking pictures and getting money. So it's like the competition's it's too much competition. They want you to be like skinny. I was like, I'm trying to be jacked, you know. So like they call me sometimes. Like when I'm in New York, we'll schedule like a shoot, and I'll do a shoot. But you know, it's like for me to go out of my way for like, you know, $1,500 is really is not necessary. But yeah, it was fun. I did it more for the affiliation because I'm signed with Wilhelmina, and they're number one in the world for sports and fitness. So I just kind of wanted that affiliation. I felt like that was going to help me out. So yeah, I just filled out an application one day, and they accepted it, and just kind of hopped on board with them. And I used that to help grow my social media because I was like, all right, like how can I? I'm just a guy that wrestled in high school and college for a year. How else can I, you know, build a reputation? So I was like, all right, let's try to sign with this modeling company, and we did that. So something else to add in the bio. That's pretty much all that was. Yeah.
Dude, I love his commitment to getting jacked. Like, like it's like, hey, what's your goals? Being jacked and being the hardest motherfucker on the mat, you know?
Exactly. Pretty simple.
All right, bro. Well, hey, we got some training to do today. I am not looking forward to hey, so you always roll with no shirt on, huh?
When I have abs, yeah, but I'm fat now, so we're going to wear a shirt today.
Rash guard?
Oh, yeah, rash guard. You got to keep this flubber in. Yeah.
I like the abs rule.
Yeah.
So if you got abs, no shirt. If you don't have abs as well, put on a rash
It's been
guard.
my rule for about 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's have some coffee, get some breakfast, and get to training. Thanks,
Hell
man.
yeah.
For sure.